For decades, the United States operated under a singular economic assumption. Its dominance was unassailable. The post-World War II Bretton Woods system, followed by the Nixon shock of 1971, entrenched the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. This privilege allowed America to consume voraciously, finance deficits effortlessly, and project power globally, all while outsourcing the costs of its empire. But today, that system is fracturing. Retaliation from Europe, strategic defiance from China, and the erosion of domestic economic stability have exposed the fragility of this arrangement. This is not merely a cyclical downturn, but a structural crisis. The tools that once sustained American supremacy, military coercion, financial leverage, and ideological persuasion are losing potency. The world is recalibrating, and the U.S. faces an existential question. Can it adapt, or will it lash out in desperation? 1. The 1971 Pact and the Faustian Bargain. The modern American economic model was born on August 15, 1971, when President Nixon severed the dollar's link to gold. Overnight, the U.S. abandoned the pretense of fiscal discipline and embraced a new doctrine. Our currency, your problem. The dollar, now backed only by faith and F-16s, became the globe's de facto monetary standard. This system granted the U.S. unparalleled advantages: unlimited consumption. By exporting dollars, America could import goods without producing equivalently. Debt monetization. Foreign central banks recycled trade surpluses into U.S. treasuries, financing deficits. Geopolitical leverage, sanctions and swift weaponization became possible. But this was a Ponzi scheme masquerading as policy. The U.S. assumed perpetual demand for its debt. Yet today, that demand is collapsing. 2. The rise of the challenger. China's economic jujitsu. China's ascent was not accidental, but a deliberate exploitation of America's weaknesses. While U.S. corporations offshored production for short-term profits, China absorbed technology, built infrastructure, and cultivated a state capitalist hybrid that outperformed Western neoliberalism. Key turning points. 2001 WTO entry. U.S. elites believed China would liberalize. Instead, it used access to hollow out American manufacturing. Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. A $1 trillion alternative to IMF World Bank dependency. Yuan internationalization, de-dollarization efforts, including oil trades in yuan, chip away at dollar hegemony. China's retaliation to U.S. tariffs has been surgical. Asymmetric tariffs targeting politically sensitive U.S. sectors, and accelerated decoupling e.g. semiconductor self-sufficiency. 3. Europe's dilemma between loyalty and survival. Europe, long America's junior partner, now faces a Sophie's choice. Subservience to Washington, maintaining NATO and dollar dependency risks economic strangulation. E.g. energy crises post-Ukraine war. Strategic autonomy, aligning with China, Russia offers growth but incurs U.S. wrath. See Nord Stream sabotage. Germany's industrial base is suffocating under U.S. energy prices, while France flirts with BRICS Plus. The EU's proposed carbon border tax is a thinly veiled retaliation against U.S. protectionism. 4. The domestic unraveling, Trump's desperate gambit. Trump's America First is not patriotism, but austerity for the working class and extortion abroad. His playbook: tariffs as taxation, shifting fiscal burdens onto consumers via import taxes. Financial repression, forcing capital into treasuries by crushing alternatives, e.g. banning gold reserves. Smashing globalization, forcing reshoring through pain, not incentives. But this ignores reality. Corporate America offshored jobs, not China. Apple's $275 billion deal with China, 2017, proves where loyalty lies. 5. The military fallback, an empire with only hammers. With economic tools failing, the U.S. leans harder on military coercion. Pivot to Asia. 60% of naval forces now confront China. Proxy wars, Ukraine, Taiwan, Gaza. Distractions from dollar decay. Tech blockades, semiconductor bans to stall China's rise. Yet, as Afghanistan showed, wars don't reverse economic decline. They accelerate it. 6. The gold rush, the canary in the coal mine. When faith in fiat currencies erodes, gold surges. Recent all-time highs signal central banks dumping dollars, Russia, China, and even the ECB are diversifying. Retail investors fleeing Bitcoin and precious metals as hedges. The limbo period. No clear successor to the dollar yet. Conclusion. The inevitable reckoning. The U.S. faces a trilemma. Continue the status quo, debt collapse, retreat into protectionism, lower living standards, reform the system, challenge corporate power. Trump's path, option 2, is a stopgap. The true crisis is capitalism's internal contradictions, an economy ruled by 3%, CEOs, shareholders, cannot sustain democracy or stability. China's response to U.S. containment has been a masterclass in asymmetric retaliation. Unlike the Soviet Union, which engaged in costly military brinkmanship, Beijing exploits America's economic dependencies, financial overextension, and ideological fatigue. Every U.S. tariff, tech ban, or sanction has been met not with equal force but with calibrated, long-term countermoves designed to erode U.S. dominance where it is weakest, its reliance on foreign capital, supply chains, and market access. This is not a trade war. It is a systemic war, one where China's patient, state-coordinated capitalism is outmaneuvering America's chaotic, profit-driven neoliberalism. 1. The tariff trap. Why China doesn't play by Washington's rules. When Trump imposed tariffs on $360 billion of Chinese goods, Beijing retaliated, but not symmetrically. Instead of matching dollar for dollar, China targeted politically sensitive sectors, e.g., soybeans, hitting Trump's rural base, exempted critical imports, e.g., semiconductors, where China remains dependent, accelerated import substitution, e.g., boosting domestic semiconductor production 300% since 2018. The result? U.S. consumers paid the tariffs, a $57 billion annual tax per the NY Fed, while China's trade surplus hit a record $1 trillion in 2023. 2. The BRI endgame, building a parallel financial system. The Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, was never just about infrastructure. It was a Trojan horse for de-dollarization, loans in yuan. Over 60% of BRI projects now settle in yuan, not dollars. Swift alternatives. China's CIPS system processes $12 trillion annually, bypassing U.S. controlled channels. Resource lockups. From lithium in Africa to oil in Venezuela, BRI secures commodities for yuan, not dollars. Case study, Saudi Arabia. In 2022, Beijing brokered a yuan-denominated oil deal with Riyadh, the first crack in the petrodollar's 50-year monopoly. By 2024, 12% of Saudi oil trades bypassed the dollar. 3. Semiconductor sovereignty. The U.S. tech blockade backfires. The U.S. bet that banning ASML's EUV machines would cripple China's chip industry. Instead, SMIC's 7nm breakthrough, despite sanctions, China's top foundry mass-produced 7nm chips in 2023. Domestic equipment surge. China's semiconductor toolmakers now cover 50% of domestic demand versus 10% in 2018. The Huawei miracle, the Mate 60 Pro with a 7nm Kirin chip, proved U.S. sanctions could be circumvented. The lesson? China spends more on semiconductor R&D, $150 billion in 2023, than the U.S. and EU combined. 4. The gold gambit, quietly dumping treasuries. Hoarding bullion. While Washington frets over bond yields, China executes a stealth financial coup. Dumping treasuries, China's holdings fell from $3 trillion 2013 to $770 billion 2024. Stockpiling gold, Beijing added 200 tons since 2000. Now the world's #1 holder if unreported reserves are counted. Yuan gold backing. Rumors swirl of a partial gold-backed yuan, a direct challenge to fiat dollar supremacy. Why it matters? Every treasury dump accelerates the U.S. debt spiral, forcing higher interest rates and deeper austerity. 5. The Global South realignment, BRICS Plus as the anti-G7. The BRICS expansion, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, UAE created a bloc representing 45% of global GDP, PPP. Their playbook, local currency trade, India pays Russia in rupees, Brazil in yuan. Development banks. The new development bank, 50 billion capital, funds projects without IMF strings. Gold-backed trade. Russia's gold for oil deals with India bypass sanctions. The endgame? A parallel economic order where the U.S. dollar is optional. 6. The Taiwan wildcard, why China can wait. Washington assumes a 2027 invasion timeline, but Beijing's strategy is economic strangulation, not invasion. Trade blockades. 42% of Taiwan's GDP depends on China, Hong Kong. Corporate relocation. TSMC's Arizona plant is a hedge, but 90% of advanced chips are still made in Taiwan. The Foxconn lever. Apple's 1 million Chinese jobs give Beijing veto power over U.S. tech giants. The reality: China doesn't need to invade when it can buy, blockade, or bankrupt Taiwan into submission. Conclusion: the inevitable pivot. Can the U.S. adapt? China's retaliation isn't about winning a trade war. It's about rendering U.S. sanctions irrelevant, dollar hegemony obsolete, and tech monopolies unenforceable. The U.S. has 3 choices: double down on sanctions, accelerate de-dollarization. Military escalation, risk a financial nuclear winter, China dumps treasuries. Negotiate a new order, share power in a multipolar system. The clock is ticking. By 2030, China's GDP, PPP, will double America's, and the yuan could rival the dollar as a reserve currency. The question isn't whether the U.S. loses dominance, but how gracefully it accepts decline. For 80 years, Europe served as Washington's junior partner in exchange for security guarantees, dollar liquidity, and energy flows. But today, that bargain is collapsing. Between U.S. protectionism, deindustrialization from energy shocks, and China's economic gravity, Europe faces an existential choice: continue as America's geopolitical auxiliary, bleeding industries and sovereignty. Pivot towards strategic autonomy, even if it means defying Washington. The cracks are already visible. France's Macron warns of vassalization, Germany's industries flee to the US, and China and Eastern Europe splits between NATO hardliners and pragmatic realists. This is not just a policy debate, it is the unraveling of the post-Wu order. 1. The energy betrayal, how Washington broke Europe. The Ukraine war exposed Europe's fatal dependency on U.S. security and energy. Nord Stream. Sabotage. The unexplained destruction of Europe's cheapest gas supply locked the EU into costly U.S. LNG, 3 to 4x Russian pipeline prices. Deindustrialization, BASF, ArcelorMittal, and others shifted production to the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act subsidies, or China, cheaper energy. The ECB's dilemma. To fight inflation from energy shocks, the EU must keep rates high, crushing growth. Result: Germany's economy shrank in 2023, while the U.S. boomed. 2. The tariff wars, Europe's reluctant retaliation. Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, was a $370 billion subsidy for U.S. green tech, luring EU firms across the Atlantic. Brussels responded with carbon border tax, CBAM, a de facto tariff on U.S. imports starting 2026. Anti-subsidy probes targeting Chinese EVs, but hesitating, fearing Beijing's retaliation. Calls for Europe first. French President Macron demands EU industrial policy to match U.S. China, but Europe is trapped. Can't match U.S. China subsidies, EU state aid rules forbid it. Can't fully decouple from China. German auto sector relies on Chinese sales. 3. NATO's crisis. The military versus Economic divide. Washington demands more defense spending, 2% GDP minimum, but Eastern Europe complies. Poland now spends 4% GDP buying U.S. weapons. Western Europe balks. France, Germany resist, seeing NATO as a U.S. profit scheme. Meanwhile, Europe's arms industry collapses. France's Rafale jet lost UAE Swiss deals to U.S. F-35s. Germany's tank production lags due to energy costs. The irony? Europe funds NATO to deter Russia, but U.S. policies, Ukraine war. LNG exports weaken Europe more than Moscow ever could. 4. The silent rebellion, France and Germany's autonomy push. Macron's call for strategic autonomy is no longer rhetorical. France withdraws from U.S.-led coalitions e.g. Red Sea patrols. Germany's Scholz visits Beijing, April 2024, defying U.S. pressure. EU-China Summit 2023, Brussels refuses to decouple despite U.S. demands. The new paradigm? Military, EU Rapid Reaction Force, 500 troops by 2025, a NATO rival? Economic, de-risking, not decoupling. EU code for ignoring U.S. sanctions. 5. The Eastern split, Poland versus Hungary. Europe's East is divided between Atlanticists, Poland, Baltics. Push for total U.S. alignment, even at economic cost. Realists, Hungary, Slovakia, seek pragmatic ties with China, Russia. Case study, Hungary vetoes EU sanctions on Russia. Hosts Chinese EV factories. BYD, Great Wall Motors. Blocks NATO expansion into Ukraine. Orban's mantra. The West is no longer the center of the world. The endgame, can Europe survive U.S. decline? 3 scenarios for Europe by 2030. Vassalization, full U.S. dependency, energy, defense, tech, permanent stagnation. Strategic autonomy, EU army, energy independence, UN reserves, conflict with Washington. Disintegration, north-south, east-west splits, return to 19th century rivalries. The likely path? A messy middle, partial autonomy, but no clean break from America. Conclusion, the inevitable divorce. Europe's elites still cling to Atlanticism, but the economic and geopolitical tides are shifting. The U.S. no longer offers prosperity or security, just austerity and forever wars. The question is not if Europe pivots, but how violently Washington reacts when it does. For decades, the U.S. dollar's dominance was enforced by a simple equation. Oil, dollars, and power. But today, that equation is being rewritten. From Saudi Arabia accepting yuan for oil to Africa trading in local currencies, the Global South is staging a coordinated retreat from dollar dependency. This is not just about economics. It's about escaping a system where the U.S. exports inflation, imposes sanctions, and dictates terms. The rise of BRICS Plus, gold-backed trade, and CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, signals a financial insurgency against American hegemony. 1. The BRICS Plus expansion, building the anti-Western bloc, the 2024 BRICS expansion. Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, UAE was a geopolitical earthquake. Now represents 45% of global GDP, PPP, 37% of world oil output. A direct counter to the G7's dominance. Key objectives: local currency trade, bypassing dollars in bilateral deals, e.g. India-Russia rupees for oil. Alternative financial infrastructure, new development bank, 50B, BRICS Pay, SWIFT alternative. Gold and commodity backing, Russia's gold for gas deals, UAE's yuan oil trades. The message: we don't need Wall Street or the IMF. 2. De-dollarization in action. Who's dumping the dollar? The quiet exodus from dollar reserves is accelerating. Country dollar holdings drop, 2018-2024, replacement strategy. China $1. 3T 770B yuan internationalization. Gold Russia 100B. Near zero ruble gold peg. Yuan deals Saudi Arabia 80%. 60% of oil in dollars. Petro-yuan trials with China. India reducing dollar use in Russia, trade, rupee-ruble mechanism. The trend. Central banks are hoarding gold. 2023 purchases hit 1.36 tons, a 55-year high. 3. Sanctions backfire. How America's weapons are failing U.S. Sanctions once meant economic death. Now, they're a recruitment tool for BRICS Plus. Russia survived. Ruble stabilized. Trade pivoted to China-India. Iran thrived. Oil exports at 5-year highs via shadow fleets, yuan payments. Venezuela joined BRICS Plus, sidestepped U.S. oil embargoes with China's help. The lesson: sanctions no longer isolate targets, they isolate America. 4. The gold revolution, the ultimate hedge against dollar collapse. Gold is becoming the backbone of the new financial order. Russia's gold standard light ties ruble to gold. 5. Cercero rubles gram. China's hidden stockpile, rumored 30,000 plus tons versus official 200 tons. BRICS gold-backed currency? Discussed at 2024 summit as a dollar alternative. Why it matters. Gold can't be sanctioned, inflated away, or frozen. 5. The digital endgame, CBDCs versus crypto versus dollar. The U.S. wants crypto regulated, China wants digital yuan globalized, and BRICS wants CBDCs for trade, player strategy goal. U.S. Fed now control crypto, protect dollar, delay de-dollarization. China, ECNY, replace SWIFT for BRI deals, yuan as reserve currency, BRICS, CBDCs, blockchain-based trade settlements, bypass U.S. banks entirely. The future. A multi-currency world where dollars compete with yuan, rupees, and gold. 6. The U.S. response. Desperation and double standards. Washington's counterattacks are increasingly erratic, threatening secondary sanctions on India for buying Russian oil, pushing friend-shoring, forcing allies to cut China ties, weaponizing gold markets, pressuring London COMEX to block Russian metal. The problem: the more the U.S. lashes out, the faster alternatives emerge. Conclusion: the inevitable transition. The Global South is done subsidizing U.S. deficits. By 2030, expect dollars reserve share to fall below 50%, from 60% today. BRICS Plus to cover 60% of global commodities trade in non-dollars. A gold-yuan hybrid emerging as the new safe haven. The bottom line: the dollar won't disappear, but its unchallenged supremacy is over.